Hey everybody, Meg from the Teacher Studio here today to talk about your first 10 minutes of math class. Maybe 15 depending on the day. For me, that is one of the most valuable chunks of time in my school day, and here's why. When I schedule my math block, for me with my current schedule, it happens when my students come back from specials. It's early in the morning. Kids are sometimes needing to transition from Phi-Ed. Sometimes they're still kind of groggy, but I know that I don't want to waste a single minute. A lot of times when I observe in other teachers' classrooms, what I see is the first 5 to 10 minutes of math class, I don't want to say are wasted, but they're spent doing administrative type work, passing out papers, grading papers, collecting books, passing things out, and so on. And I will tell you, research says pretty clearly that the first part of math class is the time when the students' brains are the most ready to learn and the most ready to be active. So I do not want to waste a single minute of that shuffling papers or dealing with other things. I dig right in. In fact, my students are pretty well trained that they start every math class, they come right up front by me, they have their math spiral notebook, and they are ready to go. Now, some days I do change it up a little bit. They might have something on their desk that they use as part of their warm-up, but as a general rule, I have trained them to come forward, and within 60 seconds of being in the room, we are ready to go. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about some of my thought process about what I do during that time and why it is such an important period of my day. Now, first of all, I do a lot of pre-planning for this by the week. So I have at least one task a day that we do that I have. I don't know about you, but I do almost all my lesson planning in slideshows. So I do Google Slides. So I get for every day one slide ready with a quality math warm-up. And this is a thinker. I'll get them into it. It might be a word problem. It might be a patterning problem. It might be something where there's multiple answers. They might have to justify their thinking, but it gets them into math right away. I'll talk more about that in a minute. After we have done this one kind of a little bit meatier problem, I then base the next few minutes, maybe 5-6 minutes of my math warm-up on exactly what my students need. And this is talking about spiraling content that we have already covered. Could have been the day before, the week before, the unit before, or it could be one of those, what I like to call most essential skills. So for me as a fourth grade teacher, I have already identified, maybe that's another good YouTube video for you guys, what I know to be my kind of essential, die on a hill. I will intervene on these topics because I do not want my students moving on to fifth grade without them. So those are the topics that I like to weave into my math warm-ups. A perfect example in fourth grade is subtraction with regrouping. They come to me having worked with 3-digit numbers. I take them, into the millions, but no matter what, by the time they leave me, I want them to understand the concept of regrouping. So even though I teach it early in the year, I keep revisiting it all year long in my math warm-ups so I can see which students might need more coaching, misconceptions that might come up and so on. The same thing is true for fractions. I teach fractions earlier in the year and I keep bringing them back all year long because I don't want students to think that we teach a topic for 3 weeks and then it's gone. So that is one reason why I do this kind of spiral. And what's great is I can do one problem, and if they're not getting it, I can do another one, or I can make a note that I need to do some more reteaching. Okay, so I told you that I start off with a problem that's a little bit meatier. If you visit the blog, and I'll put the link in the description, there are some examples of problem types that I use. What I like to do is I have kind of a bank of problem types. That way I don't have to train my students in, 50 different kinds of problems. They can kind of learn. For example, I have problems where they have to generate lists of numbers. Let me just peek and give you an example. Write a list of at least 5 numbers that will round to 1,000 when rounded to the nearest 100. So I might have another one, make a list of at least 5 fractions that are greater than 1/2 and less than a whole, things like that. So that's one type of problem. Or I have my which one of these doesn't belong problems where students have to justify their thinking. And again, oftentimes those tie to the content I'm teaching, but sometimes they don't. They are a part of this spiral review to make sure that my students all year long are getting these ideas. So why do I do this? Well, number one, I told you, it gets them doing math right away. Secondly, it is working toward fluency, automaticity. We want our students to be able to do the math, but also do it in an efficient way. So doing these warm-ups help build that efficiency. Okay, the next one, if we really want our students to be understanding math, choosing our warm-ups really selectively can help them with that conceptual understanding. Sometimes when you teach something in September, students aren't ready. But if you keep bringing it back and keep kind of broadening their understanding throughout the year, we can really develop that deep conceptual understanding of important math topics. Also, this is great for problem solving skills. One of the things that we've created a kind of a culture of in my room is math warm-ups are not meant to be alone tasks. So students are looking at each other's notebook, pointing things out, asking questions, and it is extremely collaborative, which kind of takes away that pressure of getting it right, getting it wrong. I also like to play the what's your favorite mistake game. So when a student makes a mistake, we have worked to establish the culture that they're willing to raise their hand, tell what their mistake was, how they caught it. Then I can ask my class, anyone else make that mistake? Can you see why Bethany did that? And again, this whole culture for math progress versus math perfection. And the warm-ups can be a great part of that. So if I were you, I would really consider studying that first 10 to 15 minutes of your math block. How can you use it in the most productive way? If you check out the blog post, I've given even more tips on that. And if you aren't super great at coming up with problems on the fly, I have linked in the blog post to some of the problems I use. Like I said, I always start with one that's a little bit more in depth. Those I like to pre-plan. And I actually use a collection that I've made over the years that I did put together into resources. I have one for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And then after that problem is done, that's when I tie in those more computation essential standard kinds of problems that I spiral throughout the year. I hope you find this useful. And if you have any questions, please make sure to ask. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming by.